Victoria, and thanks so much for joining my training. Today I'm going to walk you through step by step how to make stud earrings and acrylic earrings with a Glowforge laser cutter. I included a PDF below this video that has links to all the materials that you'll need. The first step is to draw out your design. I like to use an iPad to do this, but you can also just use a pencil and paper and then just take a photo of your drawing and email it to your computer. I like to use the drawing app called Procreate on my iPad. When I'm creating my design, I try not to make it super detailed because earrings are so small. Once the drawing is done, we're just going to airdrop the JPEG over to the computer. And if you're on a PC, you're just going to want to email that JPEG to yourself. This training is sponsored by my Patreon. For $10 a month, you get to download all the files I've ever made, and you also get all the files I make in the future, and I'm adding new files every month. And now it's time to vectorize the drawing for laser cutting. Okay, so now I have Adobe Illustrator open and it's time to vectorize that frog that we just created. If you don't have Adobe Illustrator, you can use a different vector program such as Vectorizing or Inkscape. Now to vectorize that frog we just created, the first thing we want to do is place the drawing of the frog that we just airdropped over to my computer. So I'm going to go up to File, and then Place, and then it's going to be in my Downloads folder, so I'm just going to select it and click Place. And I'm just going to make the frog about 1/3 the width of this document size, and that'll make it about 10 millimeters wide. So now I'm going to lower the opacity of the drawing, so I'm going to go over to Transparency, and if you don't already have this open, you're going to go to Window, and then Transparency. And I'm going to change the opacity to 10%. Now we want to lock this drawing so we can draw over it. And to do that, with the drawing selected, I'm going to go up to Object, Lock, and Selection. Now over here in the corner, these are the strokes that I typically use to create my files. Just because I like my files to be all cohesive with the same color and stroke width, I always copy and paste these into each document. The blue color is what I use for the score lines in all of my files, and the color is 3456A5. For my cut lines, I always use this red color, which is DE1E2C. Now you can use any colors that you want, but if you want the Glowforge to do something different, you have to use a different color. For example, I use a different color for all my score lines, my cut lines, and my engraved lines. You also don't have to use a particular stroke width, but what I use is 0.041 millimeters for all my files. So now to vectorize our frog, we want to trace it with the pen tool. And to select the pen tool, you can just hit P on the keyboard, or you can select it over here from the toolbar on the left-hand side, and it's just going to be the third icon down. To draw with the pen tool, we're going to click anywhere on the frog to start, and then create a second anchor point. And we're going to hold down the click on the mouse and drag the anchors out until they create the shape that we want. And then once we're happy with that shape, we're going to release that mouse click and then click one more time on that last anchor point to close it. And then I'm going to create another anchor point right here at like the middle of the eye. So I'm going to click and create that anchor point. And then holding down on my mouse, I'm going to drag these anchor points out to create the shape that I want. And then I'm going to release, and then click to close that anchor point. And then I'm going to click at the end of the eye right here to create another anchor point. And I'm going to hold and drag, and then create the shape that I want. And then I'm just going to release, and then click to close that anchor point. Now again, I'm going to create an anchor point at the middle of the frog's back. So I'm just clicking and then holding and dragging and creating that shape that I want, and then clicking to close that anchor point. And then I'm just going to repeat those steps to outline the entire frog. Now if you ever want to shorten a line, what you're going to do is use the scissor tool. So to use the scissor tool, you're just going to hit C on your keyboard, or you can select it over here from the toolbar. Once you have your scissors selected, you just have to click anywhere on the line you created to create an anchor point. So I want to delete this portion right here, so I'm just going to create an anchor point right about there. So I'm just clicking. And then with the direct select tool, which is A on the keyboard, or you can select it from your toolbar, and it's just going to be the second icon from the top. I'm just going to select that area that I want to delete, and then just click delete on my keyboard. And you're going to just want to hit that twice. And then I'm going to select my pen tool again by hitting P on the keyboard, and then selecting that anchor point where I left off, and I'm just going to keep drawing. Okay, so once I have all my cut lines drawn, it's time to create the score lines. And the score lines are just going to be all these inside parts of the frog that I just want the Glowforge to draw. I don't want it to cut all the way through. So I'm just going to click on this stroke line to select my blue color. And I'm going to select my pen tool again by just hitting P on the keyboard. And I'm just going to start tracing all of my score lines the way that I did the cut lines. Now, if you ever want to smooth something out, for example, you can see that it looks a little bit too pointy right there. What you want to do is create 2 anchor points around the anchor point that you want to smooth out. So I'm just highlighting my line, and then I'm hitting the plus tool on the keyboard, and I'm going to create 2 anchor points just by clicking 2 spots around that anchor point that I want to smooth out. And then I'm just going to hit the minus tool on my keyboard, and I'm just going to click on that anchor that I want to smooth out. And then to move an anchor point with your select tool, you can just click on it and then drag. Now, whenever I'm creating a shape where part of it is going to be cut and part of it is going to be scored, like for example, the leg of the frog, the score lines are going to be a little bit less wide than the cut lines. And as you can see, I'm just creating the parts of the leg that are going to be scored a little bit more narrow than the parts that are going to be cut. And I'm going to do that same thing with the foot. See how I have the line just a little bit further in than where it's going to be cut? When I change the shape of a line that you created, you can add an anchor point just by hitting the plus sign on your keyboard and then clicking to create that point. And then you can click on it and drag it to kind of change that shape. To create simple shapes like the blush circle and then the eyeballs, you can just use the shape tools. So you can go over to the toolbar and then hold down on the square and then select the ellipse tool. And then just click and drag to create that oval. And then you can rotate it by just clicking on one of the corners and then dragging. And then to create the eyeball, I'm just going to click on that ellipse tool again. And I'm just going to click and then hold down Shift to create a perfect circle. And then I'm going to do that again. Now I want to make sure that these are in line with each other. So what I'm going to do is just click and select both circles. And I'm going to go over here to Align. And if you don't have that open, it's just going to be a window and then Align. So under Align Objects, I'm just going to hit that middle icon, which is Horizontal Align Center. And then I'm going to go over here and click the middle icon on the right-hand side, which is Vertical Align Center. And that just aligns those 2 circles perfectly within each other. Now what we want to do is outline all the strokes. So we need to select all the stroke lines. And to do that, I'm just clicking and holding down Shift as I'm selecting them. So now I'm going up to Object, Path, and Outline Stroke. Now down here we have these stroke lines that are touching each other, but they're not grouped together. So what we want to do is group those lines together. So what I'm going to do is click and drag to select all of those stroke lines. And I'm going to go over here to my Pathfinder. And if you don't have that open, you're just going to go to Window and then Pathfinder. And under Shape Modes, I'm going to click this first icon here, which is Unite. So now both of those strokes are united as one. Now the next step is to just delete that drawing that we have behind our vectorized frog. So we're going to go up to Object, Unlock All, and then just hit Delete on the keyboard. I like to group everything together, so I just hold and then select everything, and then go up to Object, Group. Now I want to create the second earring, so I'm just going to copy and paste by hitting Command-C and then Command-V on my keyboard. And if you're on a PC, it's going to be Control-C, Control-V. Now I'm going to go up to Object, Transform, and Reflect. And with vertical selected, I'm going to hit OK. And I'm just going to move that frog over. Now I'm just going to delete these strokes at the top because I don't need those anymore. And we can resize the artboard. To do that, I'm just going to hit Shift O on the keyboard. Or you can select it on the toolbar and it's just going to be the second icon from the bottom. So I'm just clicking on the corners of the artboard and dragging them in to resize it. And once you're done, you can click the select tool or just hit V on the keyboard. And now we're going to save the file by going up to File, Save As, and then I'm just going to name it Frog Earrings. And for format, I'm choosing SVG, and then select Use Artboards, and then click Save. So we're just going to keep all these SVG options the same, and make sure that your decimal places are at least higher than 5. I like to do 7, and then hit OK. And then we're finished vectorizing our frog. We'll need to turn on the Glowforge and place our 1/8 inch thick maple wood inside. And now it's time to upload the file we just made to the Glowforge app. Okay, to open up the Glowforge software, we just go to app.glowforge.com and then click on Create New Design and then Create Blank Design. And as you can see, we already have our maple wood in the Glowforge, so we're just going to go up to the plus sign and click Upload. And then we're going to click on that SVG file that we just created and click Open. And then now click and drag it onto that piece of wood. And then for the material, we're going to choose medium maple hardwood. And we're going to click on this top layer, which is the part that we want to be scored. And we're going to click on Score at the top. The lower the speed, the deeper the score lines will be, so they're going to look darker. Then the score settings we're going to use are a speed of 225, precision power 1, and the number of passes is going to be 1. And then for the bottom layer, this is the layer that we want to be cut. So we're just going to click on it and then choose Cut at the top. And the cut settings we're going to use are a speed of 189, full power, and the number of passes is 1. And now we're going to click Print at the top right. It's time to laser cut. Now it's time to glue the posts to the back of our earrings. First, we're going to sand the back of the earrings with 320 grit sandpaper. This will rough up the wood so the posts stick better. Once you're done with that, you're going to want to clean the surface with rubbing alcohol. The larger the post pad, the better it's going to stay glued to your earring, so try to use the biggest post pad that you can that will fit onto your design. And then glue the posts with roux glue. Once the posts are glued on, we're going to let them set for 24 hours. And now it's time to color the earrings. I'm using acrylic paint markers with a fine tip. You can also use Craftsmart acrylic paint with size 00 paintbrushes. I usually do 2 coats of each color to make sure it's opaque. The last step is to apply finishing spray to protect the earrings. I like to use Aleene's Glossy Finishing Spray, but you can also use a matte spray if you prefer that look. Now I'm going to show you how to make acrylic dangle earrings. The material links that you'll need will also be included below. We're going to create our design the same way that we did the stud earrings by first designing it on the iPad and then vectorizing it on the computer. Okay, so I have Adobe Illustrator open again, and I already placed in the flower drawing that we created. So now I'm just going to select it and lower the transparency down to 10%. And now we want to lock the drawing, so we're going to go up to Object, Lock, and Selection. And once again, I have my strokes up here, and for these acrylic earrings, they're only going to be cut, so I'm just going to use a red stroke. Now we're going to select the pen tool by hitting P on the keyboard, and then create one anchor point, and then a second anchor point, and then drag out those anchors to create the shape I want, and then closing that anchor point and creating another one, and then just repeating that process to create all the flowers. We want to make sure that all the flower petals are connected. What we're going to do is highlight a petal and then click on the anchor point at the end, and then connect it to the anchor point of the next petal. I want to make sure all the flowers are aligned with each other. So I'm going to select all 3 flowers and I'm going to go over here to Align, and if it's not open, just go to Window Align. And I'm going to select under Align Objects this middle icon, which is Horizontal Align Center. Now we want to create the centers of the flowers, and I want the circles to all be the same size. So I'm going to go over here to the toolbar and then hold down on that rectangle tool and then choose the ellipse tool. And I'm going to hold down Shift to create that circle. And then with the circle selected, I'm going to select the flower while holding down Shift. Then I'm going to go over to Align, and under Align Objects, I'm going to hit this center icon, which is Horizontal Align Center. And now I want this same circle to be in all 3 flowers. So I'm just going to copy this flower and paste it in place, which is Command C and then Command F. And if you're on a PC, it's going to be Control C, Control F. And then I'm just dragging that circle down to the middle of our second flower, and then repeating that process for the 3rd flower. So now we need to create our holes that the jump rings are going to go through that are going to connect these pieces together. And then we also need a hole at the top where the earring hook will go through. And with our ellipse tool selected, I'm going to go ahead and create a circle that's about 0.05 inches wide. And I'm going to place that circle about 0.02 inches from the top. And now I'm going to copy and then paste in place and then drag that circle down to the bottom of the flower. Now I'm going to copy and then paste in place again and then drag that circle down to the top of the next flower. And again, it's about 0.02 inches from the top of the flower. And you're probably going to end up adjusting the placement of these holes a little bit after you laser cut it and then test it by putting the jump rings through the holes. And then I'm going to go up to File, Save As, Format is SVG, and select Use Artboards and then Save. And then we're going to keep all of these SVG options the same, making sure our decimal places is at 7, and then hitting OK. Now we're going to upload that vectorized design to the Glowforge app and laser cut it. We're going to hit the plus icon and then upload. And then we're going to grab that SVG that we just created and click open. And now I'm just dragging this onto the piece of acrylic. And then for material, we're going to choose medium clear acrylic. And then for the cut settings, we're going to choose cut. And then the settings are a speed of 160, full power, and 2 passes. So with that selected, I'm just clicking off. And then going to the top right and clicking print. The final step is to attach the acrylic pieces by opening up the jump rings with the jewelry pliers, putting the jump rings through the holes, and then closing the jump rings securely. Make sure all the jump rings are completely closed so the earrings don't come apart. And then finally add the hooks. Alright, that's all I have for this training. I hope it was helpful for you. And again, if you want to join my Patreon, you can go ahead and click the link below. And I also have a pack of free files that you can download. All you have to do is join my Facebook group, and I'll have that linked below as well. Alright, well thanks for watching. Bye!